How did you end up in Mid-South Wrestling?
Well, that's the thing, at every territory, I guess, you kind of, when it's time to move on. And just like Indianapolis, it was time to move on. Memphis, it was time to move on. Continental Southeastern Championship Wrestling, I got with Ron and he said, yes, Jeff, it's time for you to move on, to expand, to get bigger and better. And that's the only way you can do it in Mid-South. And at that time, it was either Bill Watts or the Crockett's in the Carolinas. And it was a toss-up between both of them because I knew Arn Anderson. Arn went to the North Carolina, the Ric Flair, because I had time working with Rick. He's a fantastic guy. He wanted me to go there, but Rick was pretty much all over the place. But I ended up going, Bill Watts, I ended up going with Bill Watts. I remember I was still in Pensacola, and he got me airline tickets to fly to Shreveport, and we were at the Boy Center there. And came in and worked, did a TV show with him, and that's where I got to meet Dick Murdoch. I mean, he put me over like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he's a great, great guy. I guess he has a lot of connections to people I knew, and I didn't know that at the time, but he got with Bill and apparently said he wanted to put me over in the territory, and God rest his soul as well. It was great drinking a few beers with Dick, but he was a great guy, very professional man, that's for sure.
Dick was known as a real tough guy. Apparently, he had a really great punch where he could knock people out. Did you ever witness any of his escapades?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he was fantastic. That's what I'm saying. When he put me over like he did in Mid-South on TV in front of, all the crowd, and after that, the gimmick was over in Mid-South. I mean, it was over the top what he did for me and how he put me over, and that was my great run in Mid-South based on him, and then the relationship I had with Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Butch Reed and Jake the Snake and all those great guys. It was fantastic. I had a great time.
Was John Nord around the time that you were in Mid-South?
Yeah, John was the Barbarian. Him and he was faced with Jake. And that's one thing, on TV and everything, all I could talk with was my eyes. I used my eyes wherever, but he talked for me. And then John Nord was there, and we got with Nord and said, let's do a great angle and do a tag team, and with me and John Nord as the Barbarian. And then it would have been Jake the Snake and Ted DiBiase, or Jake the Snake and Hacksaw Jim and Duggan. So we got together, we did that big spot on TV, and then next thing you know, maybe a week or two later, John Nord, we were driving, I think we was in New Orleans somewhere. It was either there or Lafayette, and we was driving to Shreveport, and John was kind of saying, Jeff, I'm leaving. I want to tell you goodbye and thanks for everything. I was like, I didn't really understand what he was saying to me because I didn't put two and two together. He was saying goodbye. Well, when he left that area, Bill Watts kind of blamed me for his departure. And I said, dude, man, don't blame me. I didn't have nothing to do with it. I don't even know where John went. And so John, he kind of blamed me. And after that incident with John Nord, Bill Watts kind of blaming me for leaving the territory. My tenure at that time started going downhill, and you can see it because he blamed me for John's departure.
Were you there for that infamous fight that John Nord had with Butch Reed?
I heard about that. I wasn't there at the time. I mean, I was there, but I wasn't there. If you remember, but I know they had a big falling out. I think that might have been one of the incidents that played into John leaving Mid-South. And I've seen John since then. I understand he's got a lot of health problems as well. I wish him the best. And we talked about that. And every time I bring it up about why'd you leave, Bill Watts still hates my guts because of what you did. And he just kind of laughs. I can't use the language he used to tell me what he thought about Bill Watts, but I sort of concur with what he had to say about Bill because he blamed me for everything he did.
I know that Jake really hates Bill Watts, but obviously he was successful as a promoter. What are your thoughts overall on your dealings with him? Obviously, it ended badly.
Bill, he always said, he didn't want anybody communicating with baby faces and heels, stay apart. and if you ever got into a fight, you better come out the victorious winner. And he believed in the no kayfabe, and he liked big guys and big men, and that's the reason why he had a lot of big men in his territory. And he put them over. And at the end, when I left his area, I mean, Bill Watts, he still owes me money. Because when I left, you work for Bill Watts for a week or two before you even get your first paycheck. So he still owes me quite a bit of money from the time I left his area back in '86.
I actually read in his book he always held people's pay 2 weeks.
I told you that's it. I told you that's exactly what he did. He held people's checks for 2 weeks, just for that reason. If you left the territory under bad terms, he kept your money. Well, shame on him. He knows better than that. He should make things right now and pay people the money that they rightly deserve, because you don't steal people's money. That's what he did.
Now, I heard you say in your other interview, I've had some bad interactions with Terry Taylor myself. You mentioned in the other interview that you didn't really like him very much. Could you elaborate or give an example on anything?
I met Terry in Memphis, Tennessee. I didn't like him then because all he was a womanizer. I guess I don't know if he was married or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I just know Terry had. I don't think he had the right mindset to do what he was doing. All he cared about was one thing, and that was getting what he could get after the program was over with, out in the street or alley somewhere. And he ended up being the booker in Memphis. I mean, in Mid-South after Dick Slater. And, he and I didn't get along in Memphis. So he took his attitude with him over to Mid-South. And then from there, it was between Bill Watts and Terry Taylor. I didn't really stand a chance. It was time for me to get the hell out.
You don't seem like you were the partying type at all, but out of all the territories you were in, which one seemed like the territory that had the most groupies?
Mid-South.
Mid-South? Oh, really? I'm surprised.
Yeah, Mid-South had the most groupies. That's for sure. They had the most. I only went out a few times because most of the time I was a homebody. I didn't want to go out because my gimmick. I didn't want people to I couldn't really go out with the guys. I didn't want people to know who I was. But every once in a while we go to the towns, Oklahoma City or Tulsa or somewhere. And they'd say, "Come on, Jeff, let's go out and have a beer." I said, "Okay." So we ended up going to one of the shows and having some beers together with John Nord and whatever. We did that a few times in Oklahoma and Tulsa and Dallas and Houston. A few times we went to Gillies. At one time we was wrestled down at Gillies. So of course you had to, when you worked there, you had to had to kayfabe my way into the big area. And I think Gillies is now closed, but I had to go in there and look at the bull riding,
Yeah, Houston was one of the territories where you feuded with Jake. That was Paul Bosch running it at that time, right?
I don't know. I always thought if it was always Bill Watts or the Von Erichs.
Yeah, they had a deal, right? There was some sort of crossover.
Right. So, I mean, we'd worked a few deals with the Erichs because I remember traveling with some of the Erichs going from Dallas to Oklahoma City or, all the bigger towns. We'd get in a van or whatever they'd do, like Bill, we'd get a plane ticket from the office and say, "Jeff, you need to be in New Orleans this time." And then a week later, he'd pick us up in Oklahoma City or Houston or Dallas or somewhere. And that's one of the things we didn't have no idea where we were going. That's where you lived out of a suitcase and try to find a gym the best you could to work out.
Which of the wrestlers' deaths hit you the hardest? A lot of them have died so young.
The hardest one I think right now is probably going to be Steve Williams, Dr. Death Steve Williams. He was a good friend of mine. I still keep in contact with his wife out of Shreveport, Tammy. She's a wonderful, wonderful human being, great lady. Steve wrote a book, Dr. Death Becomes Dr. Life. And he even put in his book that, if you looked at Jeff Van Camp and Humongous, you wouldn't think I was humongous because of my demeanor and my looks. But Steve was a great guy. And I remember one night, Rob Rick Steiner, we was coming back from Houston, Texas. And we all lived in a little town called Pineville outside of Alexandria in Louisiana. And we came across the they was about maybe 30 minutes before me, and they came across a bad accident in a little town called Bunkie, outside of Bunkie, Louisiana. And these cars were, I guess they hit head on, and they rode up on two fiery car crashes and helped save a life. Steve did. And what a great guy Steve was. He was, I can't say enough about Steve. We traveled together to a lot of different places, and I'm missing. God bless his soul.